Didn't you and other whistleblower attorneys years ago, when the Obama administration came in, actually warn if there were no protections for people in the national security complex that something like a Edward Snowden situation would happen?
Yeah, this was something that was warned for years, and leading up to the 2008 election, there was legislation in Congress, and most of the major candidates for president in 2008 supported this. Really was a bipartisan effort which would have made it legal for someone like Ed Snowden, who worked in the intelligence community, to report illegal conduct, to make classified disclosures to Congress.
Yeah.
And if he or she suffered retaliation for doing so, would have had a right to ultimately bring their case to a real court and have a trial on their whistleblower retaliation claim before a court and a jury.
Okay.
And that would have been a major advancement, and would have, for the first time, given, legal protections, real effective legal protections for people who worked in intelligence agencies in the United States, and bring them on a par with other employees in the private sector who for years have had access to courts and juries in whistleblower retaliation cases. And that was something that received a lot of attention, a lot of support. And that bill was actually added as one of the approved amendments to the stimulus bill, which was the first bill passed when Obama took the presidency.
Yes.
And it passed the House of Representatives, and had that bill been enacted into law in the Senate, it would have been signed by the president, because the stimulus bill had to be enacted, and we may have prevented the problem with Ed Snowden. Ed Snowden might have had a place to go to report his wrongdoing, and he would have received protection if he was the subject of retaliation. However, to make a long story short, what happened in 2009 was, you may remember that Senator Collins from Maine Obama needed one Republican to vote for the stimulus bill in order to get it through the Senate.
It was close, yeah.
And she went to the Oval Office and had a list of items that she wanted removed from the stimulus bill in order to get her support. And the Whistleblower Protection Act amendment, which was on the stimulus bill, was one of the items that she demanded to be removed in exchange for her vote. And with that single act, killed the effort to give real protections for whistleblowers in the intelligence community and across the government.
So really, if that one thing had become law, Snowden today would be not a traitor under anyone's estimation legally, correct?
Right, and he, it's a tragedy that someone would have to go to Hong Kong to talk to a reporter who works for a British newspaper in order to blow the whistle on wrongdoing here in the United States. There should be legal channels for people who work in that community, even with classified material. Because just because things are classified doesn't mean that these agencies don't break the law, or that there is no fraud or waste of spending. There's a lot of that going on. These are large bureaucracies, after all. They're government bureaucracies, and they're going to run afoul of the law.
Well, especially in a post-Patriot Act world. I would think that creates a situation where there needs to be that much more vigilance. What about the False Claims Act? This is something I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, the False Claims Act has been around since the Civil War in the United States. People call it Lincoln's Law.
Okay.
And it empowers people who work in government contracting who are aware of fraud against the United States by contractors.
Okay.
It's been amended several times, and it has the most modern version of it came into existence in 1986. And it has become a huge field, and it has been a driving force to hold government contractors accountable when they double bill the government. It has, wherever federal money is spent, there can be fraud against the government, and it has a large part of it. You may read in the newspapers a lot about these large settlements that the government gets from big pharma companies or hospitals for Medicare fraud. Those are usually the result of a whistleblower who worked as an insider who alerted the government to that fraud.
Okay.
And as a result of coming forward and reporting that fraud, they are entitled to between 15 and 30% of the recovery ultimately obtained by the United States. And, you know, this is fraud. These are recoveries. Billions and billions of dollars have been recovered under this law that wouldn't have been recovered but for whistleblowers coming forward. And
so there's a monetary reward for being a whistleblower.
It is a monetary award. It is different than the retaliation laws that exist to make people whole who report wrongdoing, get fired, and then years later either get their job back or get some monetary damages to make them whole.
Okay.
What the concept behind the False Claims Act law is that you need a monetary incentive in order to encourage people to come forward with these allegations in the first place.
Yeah, because it's a big
who's
risk.
Going to report that, you know, this a large corporation is stealing money from the government unless there is something that will reward them for doing so, rather than just having, oh, well, we'll get you your job back 10 years from now.
Right.
That's not enough to incentivize people to take the risk and unfortunately to do the right thing. It takes some incentive to do that.
Especially when, you know, even if you get to keep your job, you've now created for yourself, I would imagine in most cases, an extremely hostile working environment. Which nobody
exactly
likes.
Right. You're ostracized from your organization. You're shunned. You lose your job very often. It extends beyond your own company. That people don't like to hire whistleblowers. You know, I don't think it has done much to enhance people's resumes to put whistleblower on there. So
it hasn't helped me much, Dave.
and it ruins careers. So you know, it's a recognition that in order to get the information of major frauds against the United States, you need to incentivize these folks to come forward.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, you know, that law has worked so well. It has become the most effective whistleblower protection law in the country, probably the world.
Really?
And it has had a tremendous effect. It has had a deterrent effect within corporations because many of our largest corporations are government contractors, and they don't want to face these large fines and recoveries. There's a treble damages provision if they're caught ripping off the government. So there has been you know, it's been very, very effective to the point where it has now served as a model in other laws. There are other versions of the False Claims Act that are now applicable to, for example, to all publicly traded companies. The SEC has its own reward law system, which was part of the Dodd-Frank Financial Reform Act. And that has a very similar process where it pays rewards and has a unique features where it actually allows people to go anonymously. So if you even managers or board members of a company, a publicly traded company, could anonymously blow the whistle to the Securities and Exchange Commission and blow the whistle on securities fraud.
Hey, Dave,